We've dealt with the errors that could occur when there's a connection issue, but there's a couple of others. One could happen when we attempt to parse the JSON when it's not JSON. If the server, for example, sends a plain text string or even an HTML document when an error state happens. So that's the parse error. And then there could be an error if the status code of the response is not okay, i.e. the status code is not 200. Because we're not dealing with just one type of error now, but three, a connection, a parsing, and a status code error, let's create a function that's flexible enough to print out error messages if an error object or any object is passed with the message property. So let's just add a comment here and just say print out message. And down here, let's do print out error messages. And let's do function print error. And let's just pass in an error object. And we can copy this out of here and paste it here. And then we can update our handler to just be our print error method. And let's call this connection error. Okay, so let's test out the parsing error and what that would look like. Let's change the username to Chalkers123. And at the time of recording, there isn't a user called that, so let's try that out. Node app.js. So it's attempting to parse the string not found. And if you visit the URL in your browser, treehouse.com/123.json, you'll see the string in the body of not found. Since this isn't a valid JSON object, it has problems parsing it, obviously. So that's why when we look at the error message, it says unexpected token n, which is this n here, at the beginning of not found. Because the first character of a JSON object would be either a squiggly bracket like that or a square bracket like that for an array. So that for an object and that for an array. So it's not expecting that to be there. Cool. So one way to deal with these parse errors is using a try-catch statement. It starts with the try keyword. So when we try and parse it, let's do the keyword try. And then wrap the code that you want to try and do in a block, like that. If an error occurs, it throws an error object that you can catch with this and type in error, and then another block of code that you want to do when you want to deal with that error. In this case, we just want to print the error, and we can pass in error. Once again, errors always have a message property, so when we pass that error up here, it will access the property and print it out. And let's add a comment and say parse error here. So we've got connection error here and parse error here. Cool. And let's try this out again. So let's show the console, clear, and then node app.js. And now it just says the message. Once again, we could make this error more user-friendly, but let's not worry about this in our application right now. Finally, let's look at the status code when we see this not found message. So here we go. If the responses.status code, so we're just using that property that we used earlier on in the course, is equal to 200, then we want to run this code here. Let's just tab this in. But if it's anything else, we want to print out a message. So status code error. So we want to do print error. And then We just want to send our own object through with the message property. Cool. Let's say there was an error getting the profile for, and then the username. So username. And because username is in the global scope here, we can still access it down here. Full stop. And we could put something in here like the status code. So actually the status code isn't that helpful to most people. So if we take a look at the documentation again and scroll up to the top for HTTP, it says status codes. And when you click on here, it says it's an object. And it says a collection of all standard HTTP response codes and the short description of each. For example, 404 means not found. So we can access this with our response status code and print out a message in brackets. So let's do that. So we could do plus. So I just copied and pasted that. So HTTP status codes. You may be wondering why this is in capitals like this. Generally in programming languages or frameworks or platforms, in fact, anything that's like a constant that will never change or should never change is in all uppercase letters. So that's why it looks like that. And we can do response.status code. So let's take a step back and just see what we've just done. So we're using the print error function that we created. We're passing in an object that we're defining instead of an error object, but we're giving it the same interface basically by putting the property message and say, there was an error getting the profile for username, and then what the English string is for that status code. And we can access that status code because it's an object, and the key for that object is the actual status code, which we can get from the response. So in this case, what we're doing now is we're checking whether if it's 200. It's going to be not 200, it's going to be 404 when we visit this URL because it's not found. And it skips over this and then prints this. So let's try that out. It says there was an error getting the profile for Chalkers123. Not found. Cool. Let's swap Chalkers123 back to Chalkers to make sure we haven't broken anything. And we do that here. Save. Console. Node app. And it's still working. Cool.